This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. Yesterday, the mayoral parade of Horribles appeared before the Chicago Tribune editorial board. Every single one of them fiscal conservative, as you know.
Of course. They're very concerned about the budget, the future of the city. Oh, and real quick, breaking news. Chance the Rapper gave $400,000 to mayoral candidate Amara Enya.
Oh, interesting. Okay, well, that allows her to play a little bit.
Okay.
He's going to have to probably multiply that by 5. I mean, if he really wants her to play, because she's going to need to get on the airwaves and the mailboxes and a little bit more of a digital presence, I presume. But hey, you know,
every bit counts.
Well, right. And when it's a race to 15% to make the runoff, surprises are possible. Also, I know a big topic of concern for all in attendance was preventing future Ed Burkes.
Oh, right. Because we care about corruption now. Mm-hmm.
I mean, Tony and Susie and Billy, Gary.
What about Gary?
Yeah. Very, very concerned about never having another Ed Burke darken our door here in the city of Big Shoulders. For more on the big ideas, the forward thinking that was evident before the Tribune's editorial board yesterday, we're pleased to be joined by our friend Kristen McQueary. She's a member of said editorial board. Kristen, thanks for being with us. Appreciate it.
Happy to be here.
So, where to begin? I know you had to do 2 panels, right, because of the amount of candidates?
3 panels.
Oh, 3 panels.
One yesterday, one today, and one on Thursday.
All right, so who give us the lineup for yesterday's panel, and
start?
Yeah, pick anyone, and just give us a little bit of a reflection on that candidate.
Yesterday we had Bill Daley, Gary Chico, LaShawn Ford, Willie Wilson, and Tony Preckwinkle. So I would say maybe the most combative of the group out of the gate was Representative LaShawn Ford. He's a West Side state rep who sort of went after Bill Daley when Bill Daley kind of made an assertion that he was a self-made man, and he seemed surprised.
Okay.
He seemed surprised at some of I just asked questions about voters who might have reservations about putting another Daley in office, given some of the scandals under previous Daley administrations. But Bill Daley is running, saying, I'm proud of my family. Doesn't really deny that his name opened doors for him.
It's a great concession.
He's the only candidate in our group yesterday, and possibly in all of the candidates, who supports putting a constitutional amendment on the ballot to change pensions. He was sort of the most honest about this pension problem that the city faces, which the next mayor in his or her first budget will have to confront. So those are a couple highlights. Willie Wilson, of course, is always entertaining. He wants to lower taxes. He actually understands that lowering taxes would bring more businesses into the city. He won't release his own tax returns, however, even as he talks about all of the other candidates and their various conflicts. And then we talked quite a bit about Burke, and Tony Preckwinkle didn't really want to talk about how Burke's son got hired to a $100,000 gig in the county. But I think there's going to be some more coming out soon on that.
Well, what was her demeanor? Because she seems very standoffish lately. She always looks angry.
I don't think the Tribune editorial board is her favorite place to be. So
is she squirmish?
I wouldn't say squirmish. She is just very abrupt in her answering of questions, and she actually was pretty combative back and forth with Willie Wilson. They kept interrupting each other, and she was the target of a lot of the criticism because she's considered a front runner.
Well, good on Willie and LaShawn for not just sitting there and listening to those to regurgitate their talking points. Bill Daley, obviously the big issue. Do we find any common ground of the big issues facing the city, like whether or not to rename the Dan Ryan after Barack Obama?
That didn't come up. He has kind of thrown, the commuter tax idea he threw out didn't go over so well. Renaming the Dan Ryan, I'm not sure that's really going to solve the city's future problems. We did talk about just whether or not this moment of Ed Burke possibly facing an indictment, we know it's coming. He's just at this point faces a criminal complaint. But whether or not this is a moment for true reshuffling of the council, if we're going to see a city council that actually acts as a check on the executive branch. I don't have high hopes, but there was a lot of talk of, finally removing some of these people who head budget committee and finance committee and replacing them with some of the more transparent or open to transparency aldermen. So we'll see. They are being forced to kind of commit to that.
Well, speaking of aldermen, Bill Daley wants to reduce the number of aldermen to 15. Did he expound on that and just talk about why he wants to do that and what'll save the taxpayers of Chicago?
He looks at it, he kind of looks at it as a cost saver. They each make about $110,000 a year. They have menu money. They have staff. So, we're talking, if it did shrink, a savings of more than half a million dollars. But in his mind, it kind of eliminates this feudal system where it worked 50 years ago because aldermen were responsible for everything in their wards, garbage removal, tree removal, and that system has been more centralized now with 311, and you don't need as many aldermen as you did before. But face it, they would have to decide to do that. It's a pipe dream. It sounds good. It's popular among voters, but I don't see the council agreeing to shrink itself.
What about replacing them all with those automated order takers like they have at McDonald's now, replacing the cashiers, and you just pay, you just put your money in and then you get your order. So that's what you do with the alderman anyway. You put your money in and then you get your permit or you get whatever you need or you get that garbage can delivered or whatever it is you need. Has anybody proposed that?
I think a kiosk system would be something that maybe Chicago Party would get behind.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So
is he going to
raise that issue with her?
Which panel is she on?
Yeah, which one?
We're hoping she comes on Thursday.
Really?
She's a little nervous about coming. She's already sent me a couple emails like what shoes should she wear and how long is it going to take because she has an appointment, I think, at the Billy Goat afterwards. So we're still working on it.
Oh my God.
So who is next? And then who's coming in?
Okay, so today we have Paul Vallis, Susanna Mendoza, Dorothy Brown, Bob Fioretti, and John Kosler, who is this candidate from Bridgeport who's run twice for alderman. He's very young, pretty outspoken, but we tried to, if you get on the ballot, we invite you in, and he's on the ballot.
What about Tiny Dancer? Is he going to be there at all to just provide, facilitation to ease the transition as he sets up the next mayor for success?
No, we had our farewell meeting with him maybe a week or so ago, and it was shortly after he announced his support also for a constitutional amendment for pensions, but we haven't heard anything since. So he's kind of on this farewell tour of here are all the changes we need to make as I walk out the door. But so far he's really sort of been in the background on all of these campaigns. I'm told you would see a lot more money funneling to one or two of them if he was firmly behind someone. But his biggest concern, of course, is he doesn't want to be replaced by someone who's going to then undo his accomplishments or trash him. That's our history here is you come in and you don't badmouth the person before you. So he would get behind whoever you see out there now.
I'd do his accomplishments.
Really badmouth him.
What?
What accomplishments?
I'd do his accomplishments.
That would take a hot second.
Yeah.
So did you learn anything from anyone yesterday that you want to share with us? Or was it the same old, same old?
I wouldn't say it was. You do get a sense when they're in the room as to who would be ready to kind of take this ship over on day one in whatever form that takes.
Let her answer. Yeah.
And I don't want to say too much about what our impressions were, but you do get a sense of that, and you do get a sense of who is just really not ready. And this is probably not a race they should have jumped into maybe at this point.
All right, so
Names?
that knocks out Preckwinkle, Daly, Chico.
Chico.
Yeah, I think we're down to Willie and Chicago's party ant based on that standard. Here's a question for you though, because I know that all the candidates that are appearing before you are fiscal conservatives, so stipulated, no question about that. They're also education reformers, and so I don't know if this would come up, but with the LA teacher strike. This has provided the occasion for the Chicago Teachers Union, the Red Brigades, to start rattling their sabers, and they're already talking about what they want for their next contract. The current one expires June 30, so right around the corner. Yeah, they want your standard, fair 5% pay increase, increased staffing, reduced class sizes, social demands like guaranteeing sanctuary status for undocumented students, increased availability of affordable housing citywide. Not sure what that has to do with education, but that's kind of sort of thing there. Class sizes capped at 24. Counselor for every 250 students. Got to staff up at CPS. They're a little understaffed there, and so financing CPS and I don't know the $8 billion debt load they're carrying, and so on and so forth. The quality of schooling that's available at the neighborhood schools. Well, we've got a moratorium on charters there. Any of that part of the discussion among the education reformers, the first panel of education reformers?
We touched on it, but we didn't get much beyond elected versus appointed school board, which, as you know, is just kind of touching around the edges. We are going to get into that more deeply today because we have Paul Vallison. I wondered when I watched the press conference or read about it, which was actually after our meeting yesterday, when someone is quoted as saying, we're going to tax rich people in order to make all these demands happen. I just wonder if that also applies to Jesse Sharkey, the president of CTU, who I understand lives in a home on the lake, which is at various times valued over $1 million and has married into a very wealthy capitalist family. I'm just wondering if it applies to him. We'll see.
And so it's a fair question. I wonder as well in the conversation about CPS. I mean, it's 85% minority children. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure if we're supposed to not care or we're supposed to say that all of the minorities who are in public offices in the city and the county have got it covered. I'm not sure which position we're supposed to take. I need some instruction on that. But there seems to be this running sex abuse scandal and cover-up over at least the last decade per your paper's investigations on the topic. And I wonder if anybody feels like that's an issue that should be addressed by those responsible.
It's a question that we continue to raise, and we will raise. It is astounding to me that it doesn't get as much attention, and it's not a daily pounding of city officials who clearly looked the other way, both at CPS and City Hall and the law department. The Tribune is on top of that story, and we continue to roll out more installments. But that absolutely should be and will be part of the conversation as far as we're concerned among the mayoral candidates.
Now, I know also we're going to expand gambling. That's everybody's on board for that. We're going to legalize
sports betting, legalize marijuana.
Well, sports betting, yeah, that's coming. Dope, right? Got your dope.
Marijuana.
Anything else that's illegal at present that anybody wants to legalize for more revenue for the city?
The only latest that I heard and a little bit more about yesterday was if you sell a home that's over $1 million, you're going to get hit with an additional fee. So it's just continually bashing wealthy and successful people. But I haven't heard anything new on those lines. But yes, all of these candidates are waiting to get a cut of whatever Springfield does. The real issue, though, is none of that. It's all silly to begin with. It is not structural change. It's not transformative. But also none of that is going to start flowing to city coffers in time for the next mayor to balance their first 1, 2, or 3 budgets. So it's really just it's a non-starter in terms of them talking about how are you going to actually present a balanced budget 6 months after you're sworn in, essentially.
Well, I can't wait. I would love to be a fly on the wall for today. Vallis, Susan Mendoza, Dorothy Brown, and Bob Fioretti. That's going to get it's going to get heated.
Well, yeah, not to mention because Dorothy Brown's got the solution to the budget problem.
That's right.
The naming rights to O'Hare and Midway. So you see,
Well, sure.
yeah.
And she has a goat business, which is just
what?
very intriguing.
Goat.
So she sells goat meat.
Yeah, goat meat.
On the
The
side,
goats,
she has an
that they
investment
take
in
from O'Hare to graze so the birds don't fly in
Look,
the planes, those goats?
we don't need to get into where the goats come from.
She,
Just don't worry about it.
fattens them up before the kill. Huh?
Bill Curtis has his grass-fed beef, and Dorothy Brown has her
Goat
goats.
meat. I mean, I've heard of goat milk and goat cheese. Who wants to eat goat meat?
And
I
she's
wonder
got
if
a
it
lot of.
tastes
all the
gamey.
questions.
Yes,
All
could
the
you see if she
questions
makes
that I'm
goat
gonna ask
tacos?
you, Amy.
Well, and also too. I mean, then she can start like a shepherding apprentice program for the young kids, the kids in the urban center there. So that's
It's
nice.
all circular. Everything is circular in this city, if you haven't figured that out.
Well, Kristen, thanks so much for joining us.
fun,
You've got sort of
yeah.
an embarrassment of riches over yesterday into the next 2 days with being able to
So lucky.
hold court with all of these dizzying intellects. So, enjoy the next 2 days and the last, 40 days of this election and the last 6 months of the city of Chicago's existence or so.
It's very entertaining.
Kristen McQueary, Chicago Tribune editorial board member. Thank you for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
You're the best. And she joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Before you see it on TV, share it on Facebook, or read about it in the paper. Hear it here first. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Message and